What does radon tend to cause?
It causes lung cancer.
That's exactly why all Minnesota schools are recommended to test for radon. But a new KARE 11 investigation finds that's not happening. So which schools are testing, which are not? Here's investigative reporter AJ Legault with Radon Roulette.
Mom, you read.
I will.
They're moments parents wish they could hold on to forever.
I think that your mama must be a
Swan.
Rachel Momberg is just months away from letting go, just a bit, sending her daughter Harper off to kindergarten. But before that happens, she has questions for her school district.
Show me the valid proof. Show me that you tested.
Testing scores. Not math and reading, but radon, the radioactive gas that occurs naturally in the soil and enters buildings like homes and schools through cracks and openings in walls or foundations, often accumulating at unsafe levels. Odorless, colorless, and tasteless, the CDC says radon is the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers, responsible for an estimated 20,000 deaths each year.
And so as a parent, my first thought is, how do I protect my daughter?
At the University of Minnesota, Professor Bill Angel is one of the leading national experts on radon, literally writing the training manual on testing and simple mitigation procedures to reduce the risk.
All parents should test their homes as well as expect their schools to test for radon.
Parents should expect the schools to be testing?
Absolutely. It's been a recommendation that's been around for 25 years.
Rachel has more reason than most to expect her daughter's classroom be radon tested.
Right here, that this is the mass in my lung, and it metastasized to my lymph nodes in my brain.
Rachel has lung cancer.
1% of people who are diagnosed with my type of disease at my stage make it 5 years.
The 32-year-old mom never smoked and was a high-level athlete, playing hockey for the Golden Gophers, even playing for Team USA. She's now a long shot to see her little girl graduate high school.
I'm planning to be here. I'm going to be that 1%. But if I am or not, at least she knows that I did everything I can to positively influence other people.
There is no way to prove exactly what caused Rachel's cancer, but radon is the chief suspect, and she's become an advocate for increased testing and awareness, because in Minnesota, nearly 80% of counties are rated as radon hot zones.
It is a big public health concern.
Dan Tranner with the Minnesota Department of Health says both his agency and the EPA recommend schools test every ground-level classroom at least once every 5 years.
When you look at the numbers of cancer deaths attributed to radon exposure, I think the numbers are staggering.
So KARE 11 Investigates wanted to know how many schools in our state are following those recommendations to protect kids and teachers from unnecessary exposure to the cancer-causing gas. The answer was not very many.
In Minnesota, there are 331 school districts. But state health department data obtained by KARE 11 reveals since 2012, only 53 districts have reported doing radon testing.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm really, really shocked and surprised, and that's unacceptable.
Which schools are testing and which are not? The health department refuses to release that information. So KARE 11 directly surveyed the 20 largest districts in the metro. Among our findings, most Minneapolis schools have not been radon tested in more than 20 years. 6 of the city's 42 elementary schools were tested last year, but only some rooms. Not every ground level room, like the health department recommends. In fact, records show it's the same story in at least 7 other metro school districts. Eden Prairie, Robbinsdale, South Washington County, Edina, Lakeville, Elk River, and Minnetonka also failed to test every ground level room.
Is that a problem?
It's a great problem because radon concentrations can vary from room to room, and you simply don't catch that when you are basically playing Russian roulette by testing only a fraction of the rooms in ground contact.
We've tested all of our buildings.
Some districts are following the health department radon recommendations, including St. Paul.
This was one building that had higher levels.
Jeff Connell, St. Paul's Assistant Director of Facilities, says Nokomis Montessori could be a case study on why schools should test every ground level room. When first tested in the late 90s, most of Nokomis had no issues. But because they tested every space, they discovered 2 kindergarten classrooms with dangerous radon levels that demanded they install a mitigation system.
I don't think there's a really good excuse for not getting this information about your buildings.
Even worse than not testing every room is not testing every school. In Edina, the high school, 2 middle and 2 elementary schools have not been tested in the last 5 years. Bloomington, Stillwater, and East Carver County schools haven't tested all their buildings either. Wayzata hasn't done any radon testing in the last 5 years.
It's a relief for me.
Rachel once taught in Duluth schools, so we asked for their radon results. They told us they've never tested.
It's irresponsible not to test for radon in schools.
Does that mean that there are schools where children are being exposed to this known carcinogen?
It's possible. It's unknown.
Unknown if a radioactive gas that is easily tested for and mitigated is in our kids' classrooms.
Why would we not protect them?
A fair question from a mom who wants her daughter and daughter's classmates to have the future she can no longer count on.
And this is my mama. The end. Good job.
Now, we've created a database on care11.com of the 20 largest metro school districts where you can search to see if your kid's school has been tested according to health department guidelines. And as you can imagine, this report's already been creating a lot of buzz. Edina Schools sent out a statement to parents in advance of our report stating that they take all such claims seriously and are committed to future testing. We found more than 80% of Minnesota schools are not testing for radon up to national standards. Is that acceptable?
No, it's not. You have some hidden killer like this and have a school district not even bother to test for it. It's just disgraceful.
No punches pulled by Governor Dayton today as he responded to CARE's investigation.
That was a shocking report.
Both the Minnesota Department of Health and Environmental Protection Agency recommend schools test every ground level classroom for radon at least once every 5 years. In Minnesota, there are 331 school districts, but state health department data obtained by Care 11 revealed since 2012, only 53 districts have reported doing radon testing. In Duluth, they've never tested. In Minneapolis, most schools have not been radon tested in more than 20 years.
I think it's very irresponsible, especially since we know that, again, radon is the number 2 source of lung cancer in our country and in Minnesota.
DFLer Karen Clark represents South Minneapolis. She showed up at our interview with cheap radon tests.
One that costs $12.
She'd bought on her way in.
We should be testing, and the fact that we're not is really important journalism that you help bring to us.
If the legislature can't act on it this session, I'll look to see what we can do by executive order or other means to get something in place that requires schools to do this until legislation can be passed.
Radon gas is a silent killer.
The state says radon is a deadly threat.
Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer.
Tax dollars have been spent creating public service announcements like this one. But a Care 11 investigation found the state not following its own advice.
Disappointing and upsetting.
That's DFL State Senator Carla Bigham. Today, she, along with both Democratic and Republican lawmakers, introduced bipartisan legislation to require all school districts test for radon.
These are things that, as parents, you should expect.
Both the Minnesota Department of Health and Environmental Protection Agency recommend schools test every ground-level classroom for radon at least once every 5 years. In Minnesota, there are 331 school districts, but state health department data obtained by Care 11 revealed since 2012, only 53 districts have reported doing radon testing.
To have some hidden killer like this and have a school district not even bother to test for it. It's just disgraceful.
And I think the governor said it very well, that he was very shocked as well and disappointed and upset about it. I am too. So we're going to do something about it.
Minnesota would not be the first state to mandate schools test for radon. We discovered these 4 states and the District of Columbia have the strongest radon testing laws. Rhode Island requires schools, daycare centers, and other public buildings be radon tested. Virginia also requires every school building be tested. D.C. says all public buildings, that would include schools, must be tested. Colorado requires all public and private schools be radon tested, and Oregon mandates schools test all frequently occupied ground-level rooms at least every 10 years. Although there's just 1 week left in Minnesota's legislative session, Senator Bigham says there is bipartisan commitment to pass the radon testing requirement for schools to ensure students and staff are safe.
It's a known carcinogen, and so we really have to make sure we're protecting the children and the staff.
Well, if passed, the plan would go into effect for the 2019 school year. And if you'd like to read the proposed legislation for yourself, we've put a link to it on KARE11.com.
They are running out of time at the session. Can they get it
1
through?
week. That's the big question. I've been told they think they can, but that's a process to go through here, and time is running out.
And any idea how much it would cost to mandate this?
That is a big question, and it's different for every school district. Some districts only have a couple schools. It isn't going to cost all that much. And we found actually schools that have found radon when they have tested, a bunch of them have been able to mitigate it for virtually no outside cost by just adjusting the air handling systems in a particular room, and that's fixed the problem by improving airflow. So if you test and find it, doesn't necessarily mean it costs a bunch of money to mitigate.
Fix it.
Well, new records show Minnesota school districts located in parts of the state with the highest radon levels are failing to test for the cancer-causing gas. This month, KARE11 Investigates has been exposing major gaps in how Minnesota schools test for radon.
Our reporting to date has focused largely on metro area schools, but we wanted to know if schools in Minnesota's highest radon hotspots are doing a better job. Here's investigative reporter AJ Legault.
In Minnesota, 80% of counties are listed as radon hot zones, and these 8 counties are the worst of the worst. 75% of homes tested show radon levels above the Environmental Protection Agency's action level. Remediation is relatively simple and not that expensive, especially compared to the consequences of doing nothing.
Radon gas is a silent killer.
Dan Tranter is with the Minnesota Department of Health.
What does radon tend to cause?
It causes lung cancer. It's estimated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to cause over 21,000 lung cancer deaths per year in the United States alone.
State and federal guidelines call for schools to test every ground-level classroom for radon once every 5 years.
To test their buildings and to fix their buildings if they have a problem.
So we wanted to know if the 25 school districts located in these 8 counties with the highest radon levels in the state are properly testing. Here's what we learned. These 11 school districts report having done no testing in the last 5 years. Remember, checking for radon every 5 years is what the Health Department and EPA guidelines recommend. These 4 districts say they haven't tested their buildings in the last 15 years. And these 2 school districts, Russell Tyler Ruthven and Redwood area, could provide no record of ever being radon tested.
To have some hidden killer like this and have a school district not even bother to test for it, it's just disgraceful.
Well, since our first report on school radon testing, legislation was introduced to require schools to test, but time ran out to get that bill passed this legislative session. Governor Dayton vowed to take executive action if that happened. We'll let you know what he decides to do. Meanwhile, as further results come in from across the state, we're continuing to update our interactive map on KARE11.com, where you can look to see whether your kid's school has been properly radon tested.
The Commissioners of Health and Education issued a joint statement Friday describing steps underway this summer to improve safety by conducting proactive training sessions in school districts throughout the state. The latest Health Department data shows, since KARE11 first exposed the problem, 9 additional school districts reported testing. That testing revealed 10 buildings with elevated radon levels, and so far, 7 rooms have been mitigated. It's a start, but shows when it comes to radon in schools, the state has a long way to go before it can answer its own question.
Is your family safe?